Greetings, and welcome to my channel. This is Sorcerer Tal. You can also find me online at thesorcerersguild.com, as well as on Facebook at The Sorcerers Guild. Today, though I'm going to be releasing it a little late, we are going to be continuing with the Anarchy's Last Stand, and in keeping with the season, since today is November 1st, and in many traditions the last day of Halloween, I will be reading the 3 horror stories that are in the anthology. Okay, so, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get to it. We'll be reading right out of the book today. The first one is entitled, Bite the Hand That Feeds You. Another day in my cell, but today is the last day. Slowly, I have etched at the sides of my cage, scratching away layer after layer of the dark gray stone that makes up the walls of my cell. 1,000 times or more I have scraped at the walls of my cell until blood not only leaked but flowed from my fingertips. Even the bone beneath has been shaped by this process, growing long and pointed, until my fingertips have grown spear-like. But the walls of my cell show evidence of my efforts as well, a large cavity just to the side of the rusted iron lock set in the heavy metal door. This cavity has grown and grown, until now, finally, just one last shove, and I will be free. My only contact with the outside world comes from a small sliding pane located at the top of the heavy iron door. Anymore, I have no visitors but the hand that feeds me. Even before, there was little else but study. The same hand that now brings only dead human blood used to bring watchful eyes staring at me for hours, a mumbling mouth speaking only to itself, making observations and jotting down notes on a clipboard about the progress of my teeth or my eyes. I would often be tested, the cage filled with water or bright lights. Sometimes constant noise was given to me as a companion, loud screeching until my ears cracked and bled, leaving me deaf until the sound ceased. I have been caged in this cage since I was a small child. My family had been taken from me by one of the great plagues that slept through Terra, leaving me an orphan. When my future captor found me, I was living in a hovel, surviving off of scraps of edible garbage and alms I was able to beg from the more prosperous. He took me into his home, fed me, and gave me a bath. I thought he was my salvation, but in truth he was the devil that thrust me into hell. After the bath, he led me down a dark corridor, which descended down into the bowels of his home. The deeper we went into the earth, the darker and more dungeon-like the atmosphere became. We continued down the stairs until we arrived at a dark, dank room that seemed to be carved out of stone deep within the earth. There were only 2 features in this room. The first, a large iron door, my future home. Second, a strange man strapped to the wall by shining silver chains. The strange man spat and cursed through long, sharp teeth as he strained at these chains with a look of confusion that the links would not snap at the sheer force of his struggles. At the sight of all this, my heart filled with dread, and I turned to flee. My captor, however, guessing my intentions, grasped me by the shoulders and thrust me up against the wall. He then proceeded to chain me to the wall in a similar fashion as that of the man, albeit a bit lower on the wall. After this, he brought out a large stone basin, which he helped place below my manacled feet. Then, after producing a large shaving razor from the pockets of his robe, he slit the veins in my ankles, releasing a great quantity of blood into the stone basin below. My life's blood began leaking from my body as my soul seemed to slip from my grasp. Moments from my death, however, my captor brought out a long length of strange tubing, which seemed to have a sharp needle at both ends and some sort of strange bulb or bubble in the center. Taking one end of this large tubing, he carefully inserted it into the thigh of the strange man hanging from the wall, quickly filling that side of the tubing with the dark, almost blackish-looking blood. After this had occurred, he took the other end of the tubing and pierced a large vein in my neck. By means of squeezing the bulb in the center of the tubing repeatedly, he began to transfer the dark, oily blood into my frame, thereby somewhat restoring me to life. This process, however, proved too much for my young mind, and I quickly lost consciousness. When I awoke, I was in this cell with the door that never opens. All that is behind me now, as I await my Creator's approach. I can hear his approach, those hated, those longed-for steps. His steps have grown slow and irregular. The steps have also acquired a sort of click-clack sound, which I assume to be the sound of a cane striking the dungeon floor. The hand that feeds me has wrinkled with age. It shakes with strain as it reaches through the iron slat. I have grown stronger and smarter with every passing day, honing my hands into sharp daggers in anticipation of this day. It won't be long now. I can hear my Creator's approach, growing louder. Click, clack, click, clack. I can hear the cane striking the dungeon floor. Soon I will have my revenge. Soon I will have my first warm meal. Click, clack. I can barely hear his approach over the roaring in my ears. Click, clack. In anticipation, I think of how many times I have scratched my fingers to the bone, waiting for this moment, tearing through the stone and sharpening my jagged nails. Click, clack. My Creator arrives, standing just before the door. The iron slat screeches in its tracks, and the hand that feeds me reaches through the door. Knocking the bowl aside, I pierce through the hand that feeds me with long, sharp teeth, while crashing into the wall and through the door into the bright, white, hot candlelight of freedom. Okay, so that's the first story. And some of these stories all will eventually be connecting to the novella that will continue within the series. An origin story. Anyways, not supposed to say that, but yeah, that's an origin story that will be coming up later on in the series. The next one is simply entitled The Painting. In the dark, dreary basement of an undisclosed museum, a painting is hidden, a painting so exquisite that none dare lay eyes upon it. It is said that the artist that created this masterpiece was found dead upon its completion. No one knows why, but perhaps the painting left behind was intended as a sort of suicide note. The pain and desperation in this painting is not readily apparent to the eye. There is nothing in this painting that is painful, but the feeling persists nonetheless. Wherever the hidden mystery lies, none who have seen the painting have departed from it without tears in their eyes. Many will never be the same, and several cases of suicide are associated with this lovely painting. The curator went insane on the very first night of the portrait's arrival, only moments after its unveiling. Only 2 nights later, a security guard was found lying dead in front of the painting under mysterious circumstances. Fortunately, the painting was never revealed to the public. It has been hidden away to protect unsuspecting eyes. It was the fate of Edgar C. to carry this cursed jewel down into its final grave. The last instruction of the mad curator before he was locked away was that the painting be burned and never looked upon again. As he carried the painting to its final destination, it was already covered in a thick shroud of simple burlap that hid the entire work from view. He was instructed to leave it so. The new curator was very clear about that. To look upon this painting was at the very least to invite madness. Edgar was a lover of the arts, a spectator who can create no beauty of his own. He reveled in the talents of others. He managed to resist for quite some time. With all the precautions taken, he believed the hideous form upon the canvas to be a curse. With each step down into the basement, however, his desire to see the painting grew. What was painted there that drove men wild? What could the artist have created to drive himself mad? As he continued walking down the stairs, struggling with his thoughts, a dark siren's call seemed placed into his brain. No one would know if he peeked. It seemed to whisper to him. If you peeked, you would be the last to see this infamous masterpiece, so perfect that it must be hidden from view. No, it is cursed, he told himself. I must not look. Men have died from a mere glimpse of it. When he reached the bottom of the steps, his resolve wavered for a moment. But shaking himself forcefully, he managed to carry on. Through the sheer force of will, he drug his body to the incinerator, turning the latch and sliding open the door. In one shaky motion, he struck a match into the flame and tossed it into the incinerator, kindling a large blaze. Just one more moment, and he would be free of this terrible burden. Almost shrieking with a mix of effort and terror, he flung the accursed painting into the fire. But he held his gaze too long. As the fire consumed the protective shroud, hiding the painting from his view, it left the canvas unmarred, and there in all its horrific glory was the painting. Struck with such perfection, Edgar lost all sense and reached into the flames. In the morning, after Edgar failed to return home, his wife went to the museum to inquire as to his whereabouts. The security guard, sensing something amiss, immediately ran to the basement and returned, pale and shaken. In the basement, he had not found Edgar, but an unmarred painting grasped by a single charred and smoking hand. Okay, and one more. This one I feel is the best of the three. The first one I actually wrote quite a while ago. This one I wrote while I was out on one of my walkabouts. Anyways, this one's titled, There Is Nothing There to Fear. I cannot describe it. I must not describe it. I will not describe it. To give a face and name to a false thing is a sin that I will not commit. I will not allow that single thought, that image, to find purchase in my imagination. Yet, I must tell a tale. As I have said, I will not tell you of what was not there. The farthest reaches of our primitive subconscious. The creatures our minds drag up from these places do not exist, and I shall not describe them. Perhaps I could tell you of the place where it happened, give you some small detail, without giving you so much of a picture as to stir your imaginations, and perhaps evoke that superstitious horror that lurks hidden. I was in this room. The walls were off-white, the paint only slightly scratched in a few places to reveal the hard gray wooden hidden heart. I was in this room. The walls were off-white, the paint only slightly scratched in a few small places to reveal the hard gray wood hidden beneath. 4 walls, a ceiling, and a coffee table sat before me in the center of the room. I will not speak of anything else that was in the room. As far as you were concerned, there was no ancient writings hidden beneath the white flaking paint, the runes of some obscene spell cast long before the rise of man, and forcing its will into the room to make its ancient presence known. No leering faces or family portraits hung upon the walls, whose eyes seemed to hint of unseen horror just outside of view. I will not speak of horrors that were not there, of indistinct shapes that retreated from your eyes, escaping your vision, just before they are truly seen. I stared at my fingertips, memorizing the small bits of white flaking paint and silvery scraps of hard gray wood that had become lodged beneath the jagged angle of my broken nails and split cuticles. I had not been clawing at the walls in a frantic attempt to escape this 4-walled prison, the exit to which had not been locked by unseen hands. I turned my eyes slowly towards the coffee table. A flickering shadow moved just outside the corner of my eyes. I did not look up. There was nothing there to fear. My eyes locked on the gracefully arching leg of the coffee table as they reached from the bottom of the table down to the floor. Nothing else in the room moved. The only sound was the stirring of wind, somehow making inexplicable wailing small sound through the unseen cracks in the windowless walls. I did not look up. There was nothing there to fear. There was an unopened book of matches on the table. They had a white cover with a blue stripe. I couldn't quite make out the small black letters that followed alongside the thick blue stripe. The surface of the coffee table had a shiny veneer, almost reflective. I did not look up. There was nothing there to fear. I turned my attention back to my hands. Black hairs stood up against the bone-white skin of my knuckles. They were not clenched in fear. I studied the pattern of the crease on the side of my closed fist. I played with the loose thread on my shirt and fiddled with the broken laces of my shoes. I did not look up. There was nothing there to fear. Slowly, cautiously, I turned my attention back to the table, back to the mirror-like surface of the table's top. The howling of the wind through unseen cracks began to take shape, form, a whisper to a howl. I did not look up. There was nothing there to fear. I placed the palms of my hands over the flats of my ears just to feel the rough calluses against the smooth flesh of my outer ears. I did not clap my hands over my ears to drown out the sound that wasn't there. I lunged over, hunkering my head down between my legs to stare at a sudden small tear I found in the knees of my jeans. I did not look up. There was nothing there to fear. I tried to think back, to distract myself with thoughts of a happier time, but memories of things that were never there came crawling from the shadowy corners of my imagination to remind me of things that once did not lurk just behind the closet door. I did not look up. There was nothing there to fear. I pulled a pad of unlined paper and a pen from the pack that rested beside me. I did not look up. There was nothing there to fear. The cloth of the pack was rough and green, some sort of military canvas. I placed the point of the pen upon the paper, allowing the black ink to bleed into the white paper. I cannot describe it. I must not describe it. I will not describe it. To give a face, a name, to a false thing is a sin that I will not commit. I will not allow that single thought, that image to find purchase in my imagination. I will not tell you what was not there. In the farthest reaches of our primitive subconscious, the creatures our minds drag up from these places do not exist, and I shall not describe them. Perhaps I could tell you the place where it happened, give you some small detail, without giving you so much of a picture as to stir your imaginations, and perhaps evoke that superstitious horror that lurks hidden within our fear of the unknown. When you walked into this room, that is all you saw. 4 white walls, a ceiling, and a coffee table. Resting on the table were an unopened box of matches, a pad of paper, a pen, and these words: "Do not look up. There is nothing there to fear." Okay, so those were the horror stories. Next we will begin the poetry. We'll probably read more than one of those at a time as well. Maybe we'll just do all the poems next time so we can get to, let's see, we may not finish poems next time, and then I have a couple essays that we will be doing, and the Song of Tarasis, and that will be about it. Anyways, that will be definitely be it for this episode. Thank you once again for joining me. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please take the opportunity to do so now. And if you're enjoying the fiction work, don't forget to like these videos. They do help me decide what to do next, and also helps the algorithm show me to other people and spread the channel. Alright. Bright blessings and an interesting fate. This has been Sorcerer Tal.